there will always be a need for art but there won't be another need for fridge. Like you have one fridge, you're good until it dies. Art, there's no end to it. Like you can always change it out, and you want to build a collection. So I feel like just to encourage people of why it's good to keep in contact with your customers, and then to keep collections coming, because you never know what they're going to see, and what new collectors you're going to have, and what doors will open because of your connections.
Welcome to the Art Infused Life podcast. Today we have Jess Boldt, and she is a mixed media artist who loves the exploration part of art making, which is so cool because sometimes we hold ourselves back. And she's currently in California, from Nebraska. And I would like you to, tell us a little bit about how you got started in the art making process.
Yeah, so I was a stay-at-home mom for 17 years, raised 4 kids, and as a little girl, I loved to draw and color, but then I put on my mom hat and thought I was going to do that full time, which I loved, and I had a military upbringing, so I was an Army brat, and then became an Air Force wife, and so really wanted to support my husband, and we moved around, but when I decided to take my art career seriously is that I took a class with the Milan Art Institute. We were stationed overseas, and it's something I could do while we were over there. And I knew it was a big investment for myself, and for time, and for the finances to buy the supplies. Like I really did not have hardly anything before that, and so just taking that step in that direction of like, you know what, I'm going to do this for me after so many years. I think it's time that I get to pursue that. And so that kind of got me started. It almost like opened Pandora's box of being like, oh, there's classes. Like, I really thought people were naturally gifted and talented, and that taking a class was kind of like, but really the Institute really taught me that it's okay to not know. And that's what classes are for, to help you learn and grow. And it was so hard. And I think a big thing is the mental hurdles that we go through of not being great at it at first. Like it's a real struggle. Perfectionist, and for my biggest thing is time. I don't like wasting time, because having 4 kids and knowing we're only there for a certain amount of years, I just like things to go. And so when I'm hitting roadblocks of being like, oil painting was just a really high learning curve, and understanding voice, and just that course really taught me a lot of just sticking with something, and really for the first time really in my life of committing to like my practice. And so that's kind of what got me started.
Yeah, and you said some really powerful nuggets that Lynn and I both really is part of our heart, is the fact that you did something for you.
Yeah.
And especially that you did it with young kids.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'm past that. My kids are older. But when they were little, it seems like that encompassed my life. And I used to say, this is what it is all about, kids and having a family. And then I grew a little bit, and I discovered that I needed to nurture myself. So for you to figure that out a lot younger is incredible. And that's one of the things that we want women to, men too, anybody that wants to latch on to creativity.
Yeah.
We want you to know that you are important. And this is not only important for you, but for your family.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting that you said that you were part of the Milan Art Mastery Program, because I was thinking that maybe I had seen you there, but I wasn't sure. Um, can you share the years that you were in the mastery program?
Yeah. So it was 2019, which We were in California, we're moving to Belgium. So I signed up as we were starting to travel and go move across the world. And so literally had a suitcase full of art supplies. And we were in hotels for 70 days. And so here I was with my oil painting materials in the bathroom with the vent on, and as we kept going from, across country. So that's when, so I started in fall of 19. And then, as we all know, the pandemic hit in March. And so I was actually grateful that I had art to take me through that season because it felt like I could go explore in my own world when the borders were shut. Like here I was in Europe thinking we're going to go to all these amazing countries. And I was like, oh, I'm here in my studio. But honestly, I painted so much. I got to really put in 8 hours a day in my practice, which we were trying to homeschool at the time. And so with my husband not being able to go to work, he was actually be able to step in with that. And so I got to become a full-time artist and really devote that time. And so really COVID helped me really put myself into throes of creativity to help with my mental state too. So it was a good timing for that.
Yeah, yeah. And that's how I know your name originally, because I was about a year behind you. So maybe you were in one of their groups and then I got to see your art and think like, oh, I'm gonna make art like that someday. And yeah, that's so nice. I learned so much through that program. It's just
Mhm.
incredible, the voice training and,
Yep.
the power of art and all of those things. So, can you tell us a little bit about your voice and what your art means to you?
Yeah. So the thing that comes to mind is that I was so frustrated during that section of the mastery program because I thought I was one way and my coach was there gently prodding like, Jess, I think you need to go deeper. I think you're just saying the nice answers. I don't think you're being true to yourself. And it was ironic because I was turning 40 that month of the voice section. So it felt like I was unraveling a little bit. Like, do I not know who I am? Like, oh my gosh, midlife crisis, right? Like, so, and it was really looking in my mirror and like, who am I? What do I like? And it was the simplest of things of being like, do I like oil? Do I like acrylic? Like, I just was training myself to just go with the flow, and I never stopped enough to ask, what do I enjoy? And so the abstract part was around that time too. And it was just like, you're supposed to be loose and free. But I'm like, but how? Like, I don't like my natural is really resistant to not knowing. And so how I got through that voice section was through an amazing coach through the program. She kept giving me exercises to help me get out of the left side and go into the right side of the brain and just flip flopping. And it was just really learning to paint fast so your mind doesn't tell you what not to do. And so I did the 100 small paintings in 3 days, and it just helped like kick me into the creative mode instead of worrying, am I using the right stuff? And it was just like you get to play with what you love. And I'm like, oh, I like that design. Let me keep doing that. Or, oh, I like spray paint because it's fast. And so painting, I guess the trick of it for me was to keep playing and not be so strict. And also at the time we were trying to do portfolio, which felt a little stressful. Like, oh, this is going to be like my portfolio of the year. But and so it's just like no stress. But to keep playing on the side. And I did pick up a few classes on top of the Milan Art Institute that was more catered to abstract because it was such a resistance to me. I needed extra ways of learning, and yeah. So I think taking the extra classes and playing really helped me. And then having the support, I had some really good friends in the program that we would just message each other, really encourage each other. And we just needed that of just feeling like, oh, you're feeling alone or scared too. Me too. Like it's feeling uncomfortable. Oh, good. I thought I was the only one. Like that is so powerful to know you're not the only one.
Yeah.
I wanted to chime in on the part where you said, I just did it. I jumped in. And, there's two key elements that I want people to take away from this. One, you can learn. You just have to do it. You just
Yeah.
have to throw yourself in and do it. But the other part that sometimes gets missed is you have to be committed. You know, it is simple, but it's not easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Simple, not easy. So yes, you can do it,
Yeah.
but you have to commit yourself and you have to make yourself a priority.
Yep.
And that can be really challenging with little kids
Yep.
and Lynn and I both work full time. So, it's important that I set aside time for art. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm in Florida right now on vacation, and I have this big bag packed up that my husband's bringing because he's driving. And our friends are like, what are you bringing all this paint for? This is our vacation. And I'm like, that is part of my vacation. It's part of what I want to do on vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mhm.
um, I love it. It's not a job for me. It's not a chore. It's just part of what I am. And I sense that from you as well, you know? It's not a job when you love what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
No, and right now my career, because I did the hard work 4 years ago, I'm able to really keep the discipline up through this time. And there were drought seasons where I was creating art and nobody was really liking it on Instagram. No, I wasn't getting into, any galleries, but I continued to keep going because it fed me. Like, it was so life-giving. But now that discipline has caught up to me, that the doors are opening. And so my greatest encouragement would be, even though if it's a drought season or you feel hidden or you don't feel like your work is getting acknowledged, keep those, put it aside, and keep creating. Like, you never know when that, the chapter is going to turn and your doors are going to fly open, and you're going to be grateful you have like 200 plus paintings on the back burner that you're like, oh, I could bring this one
Mhm.
in. And it's all about like finding your customer and finding the galleries that would be a great match for you, and getting into the art shows. Like, when you can get a body of work that is similar, that kind of catches someone's attention. Like, oh, you are dedicated, you create collections, you create, because you can have just one off and you're like, yep, this is my one painting, and people are more interested in seeing collections, and different collections are fine. It's just, I think having a body of work, that's how I tend to work as well, is just a series that I feel like I could dive in. It challenges me. Whereas if I have one painting and it's not going well, I will just stop and I'll feel stuck. And so I always have a couple paintings going at the same time to keep the wheels turning, because I can get bored very easily.
Mhm. So on the disc assessment, where are you?
I'm a strong D with a little I.
Very cool.
would you explain to our listeners what that is? Because I, for one, don't know, and I'm sure a lot of other people
You
do
need
not.
to take the mastery program, Dawn. We're not going to tell you.
I am in the mastery program, but I mean, all these listeners out here might want to know.
Yeah, I've been encouraging Dawn to do it. So she did the beginner program, and now you're in the first stage, right? The oil and
Yes,
drawing.
I am. And,
It's the
it's
second
another.
stage where it gets really juicy.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm,
Mm-hmm.
mhm.
Yes. Anyway, Jess, please explain the disc assessment.
Well, it's through it, so you've taken it more recently than me, Lynn. So I just know personally mine, and I can share how it comes out in my work. A D personality tends to be more forward, tends to like to work fast, likes big contrast, um and then the I is like kind of like pop culture, kind of fun and iconic. And so with my work, I noticed I love like tearing pages, collage. Like, it's fast. Glue is like fun and edgy, and contrast. I love like having a light color near the dark, and or like the collage in the background with the image on top. That's very high contrast. So that's how I um, came into my voice, is knowing, oh, this feels like me. This feel, but I can say how I thought I was before I turned 40. I thought I was the slow processor. I want to take time on details, which is a lie, which is more of like the S and C, that they like to take their time. They want to be in their head so much, and they will spend hours on one little part of a painting. And I love that type of painting. This also tells you in the program, like what you are drawn to is typically the opposite of the art you create, which is totally true. Like I love looking at these really detailed paintings, but I'm like, I would die if I had to create that. So that kind of gives me an idea of where I am on that spectrum.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. The other thing I wanted to kind of let the people know is that your style can change and evolve over time. I think of Van Gogh or, some of the painters from years ago, and they morphed as time went on, and they changed and they grew. So that's important too. You don't have to be locked into, when you said I get bored, that's how I am. I'm like, oh gosh, I got to do something different, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what's interesting though is that the personality that someone has sometimes also is needed, like kind of to be expressed in art making. So, like if you're a really direct person,
Yeah.
then you probably like to paint, kind of more in like a direct or kind of faster way, like Jess is describing.
mhm.
Um, the puzzle for me though is that I feel like I'm like I'm at least three things in my art, but then in my day job, I'm like the other part, one of the other parts
Interesting.
too.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I completely understand the disc assessment and how it plays out for me, but
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely really interesting to use
Yeah.
that approach to finding one's voice, and that there's so many things about the mastery program that are really fantastic, but that
Yep.
is one of the things that is super unique. Nobody else is
Yep.
teaching
Yep.
that. They want you to really enjoy making art, and the only way you're really going to enjoy making art is to figure out,
Yep.
what is it about you that,
Mm-hmm.
like what style fits your personality.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yep, that'll keep you going the long run because if you love it, and I would say challenges. Some people get frustrated with them. I grow by them, and so I've participated in many challenges. The biggest one was the 100-day challenge, and I took it upon myself to do that because I'd done Inktober, which is 31 days, and so I did that. So I kind of knew, okay, it takes a certain mindset. So I did the 31, and then I was like, okay, I'll do the 100, where you create something every day for 100 days straight. And I went with a theme that, again, going back to who you are as a person, like I found a cause that's near dear to my heart, and it's awareness to human trafficking. And so I wanted to create art that kind of brought awareness to that. And so that also drove me the days where I didn't feel like creating. I thought of, oh, this is my cause. This is my bigger purpose that I'm going to get in my studio, even though I didn't feel like it. And I actually had to take my son to visit family while we were in Belgium. We flew to the States, and I brought everything with me because I knew I was committed to the cause. I was committed to my practice. And I had some family question like, but are you doing this? Like, you're not getting paid. Like, this isn't your job. Like, but I took it as, this is my challenge to myself. I'm going to be true to myself. And I took that challenge. And so, doing that challenge though, what you just said about being bored and about my style, in that collection of 100 days, I would say probably every 7 to 10 days, I changed it up a little bit, where I changed the paper I was using, I changed the colors I was using, I changed different mediums, and it just helped me. Right as I was getting about to burn out, I would switch it up, and then it'd be fun again. And there's a couple in there that I'm just like, oh man, that was bad. But when you do 100, you're gonna have some that aren't great, and some that are pretty cool, and some that are average. And but doing that, I would say find a commitment that you'd love to do for yourself, and like, and the whole time asking yourself, what did you enjoy the most? Like, I like this color of paper. I like, charcoal and ink. And then by the end, you will actually be pretty secure on what you love, and what feels comfortable to you, and your go-tos. Like, what was my go-to during that? So it almost helps you relax, knowing that the answers will come at the end of it.
Mhm. You
Yeah.
mentioned you like those art challenges, and I've watched that series before, And I get nervous just watching it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I think like, and that's the thing. My art is my solace. I use it to be still. I use it to get out of my head. I use it for healing, from traumatic life experiences. And I think, I just don't know if that would be for me because although I am a go, go, go and whatever, art is my sit still.
Yes.
But I love watching them.
Yeah.
I love watching people do them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to hear more about that art battle experience that you had.
Yeah, so how I got started with the art battle, it's worldwide competition. It happened to be on Facebook. You know how like Facebook ads will and I'm like, oh, what is that? And so I clicked on it and it said taking, taking applications right now for a battle that's in San Francisco. And so it was a couple hour drive, so not too terrible to get to. And I applied it. It was the week after, or the battle was like in 1 week. And I was like, I surely won't get in. It's so close to the deadline. But they rang me up. They said, we'd love to have you. And what I'll go back to, always having like your bio or your CV kind of ready because you never know when an opportunity come and you're able to slip it. Like I was able to have it all together and be like, here's some of my work I've done. This is, what qualifies me as an artist. This is who I am. And so they were able to be like, yep, we'll take you on. And so I had 1 week to prepare, so freaked out, never done anything like that before in my life, did a 20-minute. So leading up to it, I'd recommend always practicing, like set your timer, see, because that 20 minutes goes so fast and it's nerve wracking to not know. Like, so I like to be prepared to see how much I can do. So I would take one image, you can have a source. So I printed off my source and got to practice. And when you're trying to do a portrait in that time frame, oh man. So I also reached out to some other art battle contestants that had done it before and just said, hey, do you have any tips? And so the artist community, for the most part, it is not competitive. Like we want to help each other. Like we just want to better ourselves. So I had some great tips of like, hey, Jess, I would recommend a profile. So that way you only have one eye, and one mouth or one side to get right. And somebody said, do limited color palette so that you don't get too muddy and it keeps it simple. So I really took those tips to heart, but being true to myself, I wanted to push the envelope and I wanted to do collage, which typically collage does not work because it has to dry time and you only have 20 minutes, but I wanted to push myself. And so I practiced with it. I felt like I was pretty confident I could do it. And so the art battle is where there's 3 rounds and there's 12 artists. So the first round is 6 artists and the people who are there get to vote on the app and those who are watching online can vote and they choose 2 winners to go to the final round. So there's the first round of 6 and the second round of 6. And so 2 from each round. And then the final is the people who were there or got voted through. They choose the 4 artists and then you compete. And again, each round is 20 minutes. And at the end of the night, your art is auctioned off. People there can bid on your art. And then the finale or the winner of that whole night gets $250. And you get to save 50% of the sale. So it's great exposure. It's super fun to meet other artists. I got to meet some amazing artists and I've done it like 7 times. And so it's been a fun experience.
Did you say 7 times? You've done the art battle 7 times? Oh my goodness. That's amazing. Wow.
Yep. I've won my round a few times. I think I run it like 4 times. And then, so that's always fun getting to paint a second time. So you're wondering like, how is that going to work? But I've never won the whole championship, but I was in the championship round in February because they also count how many votes you get. And they said I was one of the top artists that the public loved. So that was really fun to be able to compete at your championship. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. It makes me nervous just hearing you talk about it. But, here's the thing about me. I love a challenge too.
Well,
like people say you can't do it. Yep. And then I say, oh, yes, I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I I've become aware of the art battle because of you and also another artist who we had on the podcast, which is Etta Davila. And as I was looking through different art fairs for the summer, I started to wonder, like, oh, is it somehow I can find the art battle through, Zapplication or something? And I think I did find it, like, not too far from where I am, but I'm not ready for that kind of competition yet. Um, Maybe in another year I'll try. And the only reason why it has to be a year is because I'm going to be in Italy, unless they have them in Italy, of course.
Oh my gosh, you're going to be in Italy? I will be too.
Nuh-uh, really?
Yes.
I'm going in August, and I will be there for a whole year. I'm technically going to be on a university sabbatical,
Okay.
and I have figured out I haven't talked too much about this on the podcast, but I have figured out the perfect university sabbatical that supports my art interests, which is that I'm studying the chemistry of pigments.
Okay.
And I'm actually, Jess, you'll really appreciate this, but Dawn, you too. I'm actually really going to be looking for the evidence, like the physical explanation for like the warm, cool
Wow.
movement. Because Ellie intrigued my curiosity
Yeah.
in the way that she teaches it. And I've thought a lot about it. And there's some things that I agree with, and there's some things I disagree with, but measurements need to be made before
For sure.
anybody can really say. So,
Mhm.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, my I also am a student at the Academy of Art in San Francisco, so I go down once a week, and I'm a student there. And they are taking about 50 students to the Florence, Italy. So we're going to go in June for 7.5 weeks. So I get to study
wow.
plein air. Yeah.
Wow.
Nice.
That is awesome. I definitely want to explore options in Florence, but that
Mhm.
is a little on the back burner right now.
Yeah.
Just because I
We do.
know what I need to do in terms of my art practice that I haven't been able to do yet. Anyway,
Yeah.
Dawn.
Well, I was going to say, Lynn and I were talking about Italy I don't know, a few weeks back, and I said, "Oh my gosh, Italy's on my vision board because I want to go to Italy."
Yeah.
And then
Hmm.
she told me that she goes there and she's going to be there a year, and so
Yeah.
we are planning a special little thing in Italy next summer.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
that is definitely going to happen, Dawn. I'll
yes,
do the footwork over there. I'll
we're
make the
so
sacrifice.
yes, I'm so excited because yeah, it's happening. Things are happening. You know, that's what I really believe is there really aren't any coincidences. And last night I was here at dinner with my friend and I said, you know, I was packing and I was so tired and I got this free movie called The Shift by Wayne Dwyer came across my feed from Hay House, which I love Hay House and I love Wayne Dyer. And there was this girl sitting across the table from me and she goes, "Excuse me, did you say Wayne Dyer? I love Wayne Dyer and I have that DVD if you'd like to watch it." And so I got her name and number. She lives a mile from my house here in Sarasota. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to call her, but I got to get a DVD. So I kid you not. My friend and I went to Target to get a few things, and we're walking out of Target, and she's walking in.
That's wild.
Whoa.
Yes. Yes. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
definitely the universe is putting her in my path.
Totally.
So, I mean, I think those things happen for a reason, and I
Yeah.
just got to go with it.
Yeah. And the
Hmm.
same with like art battle. Like I just was doing it because it's a challenge. It was going to be fun, but it's able me to push myself and really keep true to my voice. And I look back and I'm like, oh dang, those all still fit to my voice. And so I feel like niching down, and for me, I still switch it up by different papers and that sort of thing. But I didn't know by doing that what doors will open. And so like next week I'm going to go paint for a corporate event because they saw me paint at Art Battle. So you
Wow.
never know what doors open when, like you said, you're intrigued or like it aligns for you to open. You don't know what the next step will be for that.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. So do you have any tips for painting live? Because I kind of uh, decided to give a gift of a wedding painting to a good friend of mine. So I'm going to be painting live at her wedding, and I have no idea what I'm going to be doing yet. But yeah, any tips?
Well, I guess it depends on what kind of painter are you? Like, are you acrylic, oil, watercolor? What do you feel more comfortable with?
Oh, I really like oil, but of course I'm going to have to set the groundwork with the acrylic.
Right, right. Which will be great for live. Yeah, I would say like practice, like do some quick sketches at home to feel like, and then if you have an idea of what the background will be, like I get freaked out with details. So I would almost want to simplify and know like, okay, what elements will I want to incorporate? Um, and then be ready for people to come and stand by you and talk to you. I think that was the most nerve wracking part. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's going to be so weird, people staring at me. But when you're in the zone, it is actually, you just kind of like blank everybody out because you're having fun, you're creating. And sometimes somebody recommended having somebody like an assistant with you so that they could field questions while you're in the zone because you're there to paint for the couple. But yeah, having your business card sitting on a table because people will want to check you out, and it's a great exposure thing. But I think you having the confidence of practicing beforehand so that you can know that okay. And I've seen some people they get there before the couple and they put in the background first, so that when the wedding
Hmm.
party starts, then you can start putting them in. I think I've never done a wedding. I've just done like the art competitions that I at worship events and corporate events. I've done live painting, but weddings are a little bit different. It's a little more intimate. So yeah, I'll love to see your progress and how it goes for you, Lynn.
Thank you for the tips. I appreciate it.
Yeah. That is very exciting, Lynn, and that is not a hell yes for me.
Same. I don't know if I'm there yet either.
It's a good friend, so yeah, if it's awful, I'll just apologize and it'll
Oh, it's
it'll be
not.
fine. I can make it up with some nice expensive gift. No, I'm joking.
It's
It'll be
gonna be
fine. Yeah.
awesome. It's gonna
She's
be
actually
awesome.
she's actually sending me like a box of a bunch of pictures and things to kind of help me get started.
Oh,
Yeah.
good, good, good. That's great. I know I like to do as much as I can ahead of time, which art battle, you come up with a white canvas. You cannot do any prepping before, which that is nerve wracking. But, and even for this corporate event, it's a 2 hour event. I still have, like, it actually takes me time to slow down a little bit because when you're in it, you just want to hurry up. But that's when you get measurements off and it kind of gets muddy. So I think the other tip would be of just keep looking at the time to calm yourself. Like for me, I'm like, oh, look, I still have 10 minutes. Oh, look, I still have, because when you're in the zone, you think time is, it just does something different when you're in the zone.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. So I want to know more about your art and like what is the voice in your art or what are the collectors getting from it?
Thank you for asking. Yeah, I feel like mine is like my own style is it's called vintage urban. So it takes a part of my life of like when I grew up on the farm, I was, country girl, no shirt, just overalls. Like I loved the farm life until we were 8. Then my dad joined the army. We moved to Europe, and then that has the urban aspect. And so I see that I like to take vintage things like newspapers, like I like the typewriter font. I like these things because it reminds me of the farm and like the family I grew up with, and then I like the urban landscape or the people of modern day. So I feel like you get a merge of the past and urban with my work. I like to also the whole layers thing and with the collaging, I like to tear the pages. And since my life was so kind of scattered, I feel like when I grab papers and I'm tearing it, I kind of felt like that's how I felt growing up. Like I was torn from this location, torn from family. But in the end, I get this amazing life. I get to look back. And so I like kind of creating work that kind of is like a mess or you don't know where it's going and then putting an image on top to be like, no matter what your life has been, no matter what torn places of your past, you're able to use that and create something, beautiful, beautiful from the
Mm,
chaos. And so,
yeah.
um, I love the idea of encouraging people to think outside the box, to look at your life in a different perspective so that it can propel you forward, and to look at your weakest part and actually turn that into your strength.
Mhm.
So I feel like that's a big part of my voice.
Yeah,
I like it,
I
and it's making
totally.
me think of a quilt because I
Yeah.
feel like all these pieces of paper, the way they come together is kind of like a patchwork, almost like a
Mhm.
quilt, and which makes me want to know more about what kind of paper you use. Do you just use any old paper, or do you like gravitate towards certain kinds of newspapers or certain sections of the newspaper or other things?
So words are a big deal for me. So when we were in Belgium, I actually collected newspapers from around the world because we were at a national, NATO base where it has all the countries. So I was able to get newspapers from France, from the Netherlands, from Germany. And so getting words torn from those pages from the big bold, I just love seeing different languages and different boldness, and then like the different colors. Some newspapers were lighter, some were darker, and or vintage books. I also think that's so fun to use. And even, but going back to the newspapers, like it's such a thing of the past. If you think about, people would depend on newspapers, and it was such a big thing for our grandparents' age. And now we're just kind of like digital, it's like digital. So I like still using recycling, reusing things to bring to life. I'm even going to explore. I had a sweet person on a crafting page. They said, we have some old vintage photos. Does anybody want them? And I'm like, oh, I do. I don't know what I'm doing with them yet, but I love because they didn't know who it was, and it was like so removed. They were like, it's fine. We were just going to donate them somewhere. And so, looking for unique. The next step for me is I'm always on the lookout. Like, okay, what new papers or what different material. Like I also did a series on vinyl records, which was so fun. Like, it's just because those are coming back. You see these, in Target, like these record players again. You're like, oh my gosh, it's so vintage cool. And so definitely curious on what the next step will be, but I'm just always open and just like intuitively, okay, what am I being pulled to? And even like tissue paper that has like a different design on it or unique designs. I love unique patterns and just tearing them and putting it on the page. That I like to do that.
I like that too. I am the collector of garbage. So
I never heard it put
I
like that before.
I just made some paintings. I bought my granddaughter some markers and it had this really cool square top on it. And I'm like,
Yep.
oh, I can make prints with that. So I saved that. And
Yep.
then the paper towel roll. And then I took some cardboard and just ripped part of it off. And so part of it was the cardboard and part of it
Yep.
was still solid. And I'm
Mm,
like, oh, what a cool stamp. And I made these beautiful little paintings with my junk that
come
people
on.
like to throw away.
Yep.
I saved the little piece in the pizza box that you get that holds the
Mm,
pizza up.
Yep.
I'm like, oh, I can make something really cool with this, but it's just that exploration
Yeah.
and people think it's garbage and it's like it makes beautiful art.
Yep.
Yeah, I was really drawn to what you were saying there.
Yeah, like
mhm.
trash to treasure, that concept of like, oh, your trash, well, it's my treasure. Like on one of my largest paintings I ever done was this Paris girl, and what I used for her earring was a UPC label. Like I was like, just those kind of fun little to make it like interesting, right? It's like you never would have accepted, but it was a cool design, and I was like, that makes an awesome earring.
I love that.
Awesome. Um, and I want to know more about the other art fair. I think that's like another big deal, Jess.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's the first time getting into that one. I wish it was in LA because I would have been able to drive to that one versus fly to Dallas. But I think they look for, again, artists that have a solid series that have consistently, um, been secure in their voice so that they have a collection and they have a website. So these things are helpful when you're trying to get into a fair, especially if you're not represented yet by a gallery. So I actually had a friend just come over last night, and she's actually driving to Dallas. And so she's going to take my big painting.
Wow.
I was so nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, to ship these, it's going to cost how much? But I'll be able to bring some really big pieces, which is not typical artists. They try to do 18 by 24 or like the medium size because you're traveling and it costs money to get to the fair and to make sure they don't get ruined. So I'll be able to have some bigger pieces, which will be great for my stand to stand out. stand out. And I did get a larger booth. I recommend that, even though some people would say, well, just get the smaller booth if it's your first time so that you can kind of see, do you even like it? Which I think there's some truth in that. But also, I think a big booth helps you get more of your voice on the wall so people can see this is who you are and you're solid and you have a lot of work that's a variety but still the same voice. So I got the 28-foot booth. So it's second to the largest booth size. So and I'm taking 2 pretty large pieces and then a couple medium and just a few prints. I don't deal a lot with prints because I personally just don't like the hassle of it. I'm more interested in selling originals and maybe smaller pieces. It's just, I don't know if it's because of my personality. I'm not detailed enough to figure out the printing thing. I don't know. But I'll have some pieces that are 100 to 300 range, and then probably more in the 300 to 1,000, and then 2 that are 2,500.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
You know, anything can be learned or outsourced.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a prime example because I tell Lynn this all the time. You're so much more techie than me. But I went to a friend's house and, I'm uploading some photos and I'm doing some digital marketing, and she's looking at me like, what are you doing? And I'm like,
Mm,
I go, it's really easy. And she
yeah.
knows nothing about it. And she's,
Exactly.
very successful. So
Yep.
I can learn. We
Yeah,
can learn.
we can.
And
Exactly.
I can tell you the prints that I have sold,
Mm-hmm.
it's unbelievable, unbelievable to me. And they turn out beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you can learn that, and you will probably get a lot of collectors.
Yes.
Just putting
Yeah.
that out there.
Yeah. And you're way better than me at so many of these things, Dawn. You're way ahead of me on it. So I am not better at tech than you. It's just that we've gravitated to slightly different things. So I've learned a
Yeah,
few things that you haven't learned yet, and vice versa.
that's true. That's true.
Yeah,
Always
oh,
go ahead.
sorry. Something I learned right after I graduated the Milan Art Institute. I thought people would be knocking on my door. Oh, Jess, your art's amazing. Let me take it. And that did not happen. And I thought Instagram was going to blow up because, well, look, I can create amazing art. Why am I not blowing up? Well, I decided to start doing art reels. And it just because that's what it looked like you needed to do. And so I threw myself into another challenge that I saw that an Instagram coach was like, hey, do a reel every day for 30 days. And so it was the learning curve. Oh my gosh, it took like 3 hours to learn how to edit, cut, do the sound, all this. But I could now whip one out in 5 minutes. So it definitely took
Wow.
discipline in that. But I would say, depending on your voice, I thought I was going to do like every man, like, oh, everyone can be an artist, everyone can do this, but really that actually isn't my voice. My voice is more um not everyone can put in as much energy and time into this career as much as I am right now. So it's not for everybody, and I need to recognize that. And so I'm definitely stepping back more and more from Instagram because it's not, after looking over it for 3 years, I've grown some, but it's not at the level where I thought. And so, and the return of investment, you have to also look at that. Like, is it worth the time? And you guys doing this podcast is a great, like you're jumping on the wagon now, which I think is going to be amazing for you guys for 2023 and visual. I think everybody, especially as visual learners, we want to see faces. We want to, experience it visually. So I think realizing what's working for you, and when it's not, step back and be like, okay, why am I doing this? What is the purpose of this? And really evaluating. I think always evaluating every quarter. Okay, what has worked, what hasn't, and I wish I would have done that earlier, but now I am, and doors are opening, and I'm able to step into stuff that actually are what do you call moving the needle, like making sales, getting the right clients, because I've started to let go of things that really weren't working for me.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you.
Sure.
You, I want to bring it back full circle. And I am actually reading, can't remember the title of the book, but Tiny Magic, Tiny Business, Big Magic, or something like that.
Hmm.
And one of the things that they talk about in this book is the fact that our purpose, your purpose has to be your driver. Yeah,
Yes.
you can be very successful at your business. And this woman started out, she was in Europe and she saw all the waste of bags and she decided to make, reusable bags. And it was a tiny idea. And she started a tiny business and she goes, that's not the meaning of this. It doesn't mean that it has to be tiny. It just means that you have to be purposefully driven.
That's right.
And as long as your purpose is in alignment with who you are and what you are, the money is wonderful and it will come,
Yeah.
but that can't be your driving factor.
Yep.
And I feel like so many people, that is their driving factor. Like Lynn and I, at this point, we're not making money from our podcast, but we love it. We
We're
Mm.
love
spending money.
we love talking to people. We love getting to know people. And it's like the highlight of my Thursday. I'm like, oh my gosh, who are we going to talk to today? So as
Yeah.
long as your purpose is in alignment with what you're doing and
Yeah.
you continue to love it and it feeds your soul, money's not bad.
That's
And
right.
it will
Hmm.
eventually come, but that doesn't have to be, that is not the driving
That's
factor.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's that saying when you start, like, I don't think it's talked about much, but for our career, I've heard that it takes up to 7 years to get established. And honestly, I think I did hear that 3 years ago, but I still was stubborn. I'm like, no, well, I'm going to do it in 1 year. I'm like, I'm going to make six figures at, 1 year from today. And it just wasn't realistic. And I had high hopes and expectations. So when I did meet it, it was really disappointing. But then I had to step back and be like, well, am I loving what I'm doing? Am I driven by this? And I'm like, absolutely. So then it's the long haul. It's the marathon run. It's not the sprint. And knowing that there's going to be drought seasons, and then it's going to come like flooding, and then it's all about like perspective of you're driven, and like I said, the money will come in. It's just getting to that point of excellence and your purpose of being an artist or creative. So
Mhm.
Yeah. That is so good. And it's taken me a couple of years to learn this lesson, but I think it finally sunk in. Nobody else really has the answer for what's going to work for any one other person.
yep,
And I have been on a quest to figure out like, okay,
right,
well, I think it's partly because of the way I was raised, but also because like I went through, 10 years of college and earn a
mhm,
PhD, by writing a dissertation and publishing X number of papers. So I keep thinking like, oh, the artist path should be something like that. Like I'll take these classes, I'll paint in, these mediums,
yep,
I'll go to these shows, and then somehow it's going to work. But it doesn't work. And even specifically, I've been really surprised at which of my artworks have
yeah,
been more sellable
yeah,
is kind of the opposite of what I've been taught by some people who really, know what works for them. And I've been just shocked. And the stuff that is the most sellable for me is the stuff that is definitely much more personal. And by personal, I mean that I'm also having some sort of emotional engagement. And
totally,
usually usually it's something where maybe I'm having like a realization or like a moment of growth or a period of growth.
Hmm.
And somehow those things somehow transpire into the artwork and
Yep.
other people can feel it. And
Yep.
stuff that I thought what should not be sellable is some of the
Hmm.
stuff that's selling first. And I'm just like, whoa.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hmm.
So true.
Yeah. So, yeah. So really good advice. And yeah, I have one last question, Jess.
Sure.
Well, actually, I think we might have two, but I have this one burning curiosity, and it's because there's been a long delay on that Outstanding Artist 3, and I thought I knew who was going to be in it, but because we're waiting for it to be aired, I forgot. So, did you apply to the Outstanding Artist? Have you been
I
part of
did.
that?
Uh-uh.
Are you gonna apply in the future?
I don't know. That does sound interesting. It would be, I know since I'm a mixed media artist, it would be fun to see different types of artists compete.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait to see season 3.
I
Um,
know. It
I
has,
have a feeling it's going to come out really, really big because that's the only reason that they would have such a long delay, I think, is if they're
right.
doing something really big.
Agreed.
But anyway, and then one of the other questions that we usually like to ask is what other things you want to share with our listeners before we end up letting you go?
Yeah, I think something that popped in my head because I'm seeing that now, is is the importance of building a relationship with your collectors. You never know what that connection is until you really start asking questions. And this is great advice for at the fair, whether somebody stops by your shop or DMs you. Getting to know your customer is so important because they are going to be your clients. And a lot of the times they become your friends because they're so supportive of your adventure, and they want to know more about your journey. And because it brings more to life your painting that they have in their home. And I would say your best clients are those is that they can be repeating customers. And I just shared a reel recently that somebody else did about how there will always be a need for art but there won't be another need for fridge. Like you have one fridge, you're good until it dies. Art, there's no end to it. Like you can always change it out, and you want to build a collection. So I feel like just to encourage people of why it's good to keep in contact with your customers, and then to keep collections coming because you never know what they're going to see, and what new collectors you're going to have, and what doors will open because of your connections. And so I am able to do some things because I have a great connection with some of my clients, and you just never know. And it's so fun to see people who are so supportive of you and cheering you on. And so, yeah, the part of if you're nervous and an introvert, which as a little girl, I was definitely an introvert, and I can slip into that in big environments like an art fair. But to put yourself in their shoes, like how would you want to be treated if you're going into someone's stall? Like, would you want to be welcomed? Would you want them to ask what your name is? And so, really like laying down the anxiety by really trying to talk to the person in front of you and getting to know them. Like, I think that would be the biggest tip I have for that.
Oh, that's great advice.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jess, for joining us today. I really feel like I got to know you so much better. As always, we will share your link in the podcast bio,
Right.
and people can follow you and get your art. We enjoyed having you so much, and happy arting.
Yeah, thank you both.
Thank you.